You can feel it the moment you open the charts. Not in the candles, not in the spreads, not even in the setup, but in that quiet tension behind your ribs where a simple click becomes a verdict on who you are. And if that feels familiar, it's because what you're fighting was never the market. It was the part of you that needs the next outcome to confirm your value. The part that wants the screen to say, you're good or you're finished. And the market will happily play that game with you for the rest of your life. Most people think ego means arrogance, chest out, loud opinions, needing to be right in front of others. But the ego that destroys traders is usually quieter than that, almost invisible, because it doesn't brag, it clings, it doesn't shout, it attaches, it wraps itself around the result of the next trade. Like the result is oxygen, and once it does, every tick becomes personal. Every pullback becomes an insult. Every stop loss becomes a sentence. Every take profit becomes a drug. If you're new here, hit like and subscribe. Not because it changes the market, but because it changes what you allow into your mind every day. And if this hits a nerve, drop a comment with, "I move differently." Because the men who understand this don't need a long explanation. They feel it instantly. Here is the real problem, and it isn't your strategy, it isn't your entries, it isn't the lack of indicators, it isn't that you don't know what a range looks like. The problem is that you trade your identity, you trade your mood, you trade your last win, you trade your last loss, you trade your hope, you trade your fear, you trade your need to prove something, and then you call it analysis so it sounds respectable. A loss happens and the mind doesn't just record it as a loss, it translates it into meaning. And meaning is where the damage starts. Because meaning becomes story, and story becomes identity, and identity becomes behavior, and behavior becomes your next trade. And you don't even notice the chain because it happens in silence, in milliseconds, behind your eyes. Some people take a loss and it doesn't hurt their account nearly as much as it hurts their self-image. Because they weren't just risking money, they were risking being right, they were risking being the guy who finally figured it out. They were risking the fantasy of certainty, and when the stop gets hit, the ego tries to repair itself immediately. Not tomorrow, not after review, not after sleep, but now, because ego is impatient. Ego is allergic to unresolved discomfort, and that's how revenge trading is born. Not from anger alone, but from identity panic, from the feeling of, I can't sit here with this. A win happens and the mind doesn't just record it as a win, it inflates it into a signal that you are untouchable, that you're back, that the market respects you, that today is your day, and then you start reaching for risk you didn't plan, entries you didn't earn, size you can't justify, and you call it confidence. But it's not confidence, it's a temporary high built on the same fragile attachment, just on the other side of the coin. This is the cycle that ruins careers quietly because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks like just trading, but inside it's an emotional economy. Losses create debt, wins create credit, and you keep trading to pay your inner balance sheet. And the market becomes your judge, your therapist, your mirror, and your executioner. The majority live like that, up and down, reactive, hungry, needing the next candle to reassure them that they're okay, and they don't realize what they are handing away, because every time you let the outcome decide your inner state, you hand control of your nervous system to something that has no obligation to care about you. That's why one losing trade can poison a whole day, not because the loss is catastrophic, but because the ego interprets it as a threat. And when the ego feels threatened, it demands immediate action. And immediate action in trading is usually the worst action because it's not aligned with your process, it's aligned with your pain. There are people who move differently. They don't try to detach like it's a motivational trick. They don't repeat affirmations at the chart like the market is listening, and they don't pretend they don't care because pretending is still attachment. It's just attachment wearing a mask. They do something far more precise. They separate. They understand a simple truth that most never learn, which is that attachment is not removed by force, it's removed by clarity, because the moment you see what you're actually attached to and what it's costing you, the grip starts to weaken on its own. the same way your hand relaxes when you realize you've been squeezing something sharp. So let's speak in a way that the ego can't hide from. You are not the trade. You are not the last trade. You are not the next trade. You are the one observing the trade. And that sounds obvious until you see how rarely you live it. Because most traders don't observe, they merge, they fuse with the position, they become the position. And once you become the position, you can't think cleanly because the mind is no longer asking, is my plan valid? It's asking, am I safe? Safety is where discipline dies. And the market has a strange way of pulling you away from presence. Because presence is quiet. Presence is boring. Presence is clean. And the ego hates clean environments. The ego wants drama. Because drama gives it a role to play. Drama gives it a reason to exist. Drama gives it an excuse to interfere. That's why the past and the future are the ego's favorite places to live. The past is where it replays what happened, where it edits the tape, where it tortures you with alternate timelines. If only I held, if only I didn't enter, if only I used a different stop. And it does all of that not to improve you, but to keep control, because a mind trapped in the past is not present enough to execute the next setup neutrally. The future is where it imagines the outcome before it happens, where it tries to control uncertainty by rehearsing every possible pain. What if I lose? What if it hits my stop? What if it reverses? What if I'm wrong again? And once you are living in that future event, you are no longer trading the chart, you are trading a movie in your head. This is why hesitation happens even when the setup is clean. This is why you can know your model and still freeze. It's not because you don't want it enough, it's because you're not in the present moment. You're in yesterday's damage or tomorrow's fear. And the only way out is not motivation, it's reality. Reality is that every trade is its own event. The setup can look familiar, the range can be similar, the CLS boundaries can repeat, the same session behavior can show up again, but the trade itself is never the same, because the participants are never the same, the liquidity is never the same, the pace is never the same, and if you respect that, you stop dragging emotional baggage from old outcomes into new situations that don't deserve it. Some men learn to walk into the chart like they walk into a cold room, calm, neutral, clean. Not because they're emotionless, but because they know emotion is information, not instruction, and they don't confuse feeling with signal. They know the market doesn't care if you need a win today. They know it doesn't care if you're trying to make rent. They know it doesn't care if you promised yourself you'd finally turn it around. The market is not your friend and it's not your enemy. It's a mirror that reflects your state. If you're chaotic, it pulls chaos out of you. If you're desperate, it amplifies desperation. If you're impatient, it punishes impatience. If you're disciplined, it reveals opportunities that were always there, but invisible to a reactive mind. If this is resonating, tap like, because a reminder is sometimes all it takes to interrupt the old pattern. And if you've felt the roller coaster before, comment, I wait, then I execute. Not for attention, for alignment. Now there's a deeper layer most traders avoid, because it's uncomfortable. Ego attachment to outcome is not just a mental habit, it's a nervous system habit. It's the body expecting danger and trying to control it. It's the body treating uncertainty like a threat. That's why you can logically understand probability and still act irrationally, because logic lives in one place and survival lives in another. And trading activates survival in people who haven't trained themselves to be safe inside uncertainty. The hunter type doesn't remove uncertainty. He makes peace with it, not with words, with repetition, with exposure, with proof, with process. And this is where most people get it backwards, because they think detachment means not caring, but detachment is not apathy. Detachment is sovereignty. It's the ability to remain stable while reality unfolds. It's the ability to let the trade do what it will do without you interfering to protect your ego. And the reason it feels effortless for certain people is because they're not trying to detach from the trade after they enter. They detached long before, through how they built their system, how they tested it, how they journaled it, how they proved it to themselves over a sample size, until the outcome of any single trade became too small to carry identity weight. That's the real key. Sample size makes ego smaller. Not because you become humble, but because you become precise. When you've seen your model play out hundreds of times, you stop needing this one to validate you. When you've logged enough trades, you stop trying to win today and start trying to execute correctly. When you've back-tested and forward-tested, you stop being hypnotized by a single candle and start seeing the distribution of outcomes. When you know your numbers, you don't beg the market for reassurance, because reassurance is already in your data. Most people want confidence without proof. The hunter type wants proof before confidence, and proof is built in silence. It's built in boring sessions where you do the same thing again. It's built in weeks where you don't chase. It's built in days where you do nothing because nothing is there. It's built in journaling that no one applauds. It's built in reviewing trades you wish you didn't take. It's built in admitting that you weren't unlucky, you were undisciplined. This is why the separation happens. There are those who react and those who wait, those who chase and those who observe, those who need action to feel alive, and those who can sit in stillness without losing themselves. Not everyone can tolerate that stillness. Not everyone can tolerate a clean process. Most people secretly want trading to be entertainment. They want stimulation, they want a reason to feel something, and the market will give them that until they're empty. But there are people who didn't come for entertainment. They came for mastery. They came because something in them is tired of being ruled by impulse. They came because they've seen what reaction does to a life. They've seen what ego costs, not just in money, but in sleep, relationships, health, self-respect, and the quiet shame that comes from repeating the same mistake while telling yourself you're different. If you've been there, you already know the pain I'm talking about. You change strategies after one bad day, not because the strategy failed, but because your ego can't tolerate uncertainty. You hesitate on clean setups because your last loss is still living in your hands. You overtrade after a win because you want to stay on the high, and you don't realize the high is the trap. You size up to make it back because your identity wants to repair itself quickly. You cut winners early because you don't trust yourself to be right. You let losers run because you don't want to admit you were wrong. None of that is technical, it's psychological. It's ego protecting itself through action. And the market doesn't reward ego protection. It rewards disciplined execution inside a repeatable framework. This is why I talk about the hunter-trader archetype. Because once you see trading as identity, you stop looking for magical entries and start looking at the operator. The hunter type doesn't enter because he's bored. He doesn't enter because he's anxious. He doesn't enter because he wants revenge. He enters because conditions align. He waits for the range to define itself. He waits for the manipulation into key areas. He watches how price behaves at the edges. He respects the fact that most of the day is noise. He understands that patience is not a personality trait, it's a weapon. He can sit through boredom without needing to do something because he doesn't measure his worth by activity. He measures his worth by accuracy. He doesn't need 10 trades. He needs one clean trade executed cleanly. And because he can tolerate waiting, he gets access to the parts of the market that impatient people never see, the parts where liquidity gets swept, where weak hands get shaken out, where the real move begins after the crowd has already exhausted itself, the parts where CLS ranges stop being lines on a chart and start being a map of behavior. He doesn't worship the map. He becomes the type of person who can use it. And that's the difference, because most traders are trying to find a system that will save them from their own nervous system. But the hunter type builds a system that forces the nervous system to evolve, because the rules don't care about your feelings. The process doesn't care about your mood, and repetition doesn't negotiate. If this is the type of trading you respect, subscribe so you don't miss the next reminder. Because the mind forgets, it drifts, it gets pulled back into the old story, and reminders keep you clean. Now let's talk about detachment without effort, because the word effort is where most people sabotage themselves. They treat detachment like a performance. They say, I need to detach, and immediately their mind creates tension because it hears work, and it tries to force a new state, and forcing a state is still ego control. It's still manipulation. It's still the mind trying to engineer safety. Detachment becomes effortless the moment you stop demanding certainty from a single trade and start demanding integrity from your process. Integrity is a clean word. It means you did what you said you would do. It means you followed your plan even when you didn't feel like it. It means you didn't make decisions to protect your ego. It means you didn't break rules to feel better. It means you let the market decide the outcome and you decided the execution. And when you do that consistently, your identity shifts. You stop being a trader who wins or a trader who loses, and you become something more dangerous, a trader who executes. Execution becomes the identity. Process becomes the identity. Discipline becomes the identity. And once discipline is identity, detachment is no longer a technique, it's just how you operate. Some men have a quiet internal ritual before they trade, and it doesn't look mystical, it looks simple. They remind themselves that the trade is an external event. They remind themselves that the chart is not a mirror of their worth. They remind themselves that a stop loss is not a personal failure, it's a business cost. They remind themselves that a take profit is not proof of genius, it's a result inside probability. They don't chant it, they don't hype themselves up, they just remember. And if you watch closely, you'll notice something else. They don't stare at the position like it's a hostage situation. They don't hover over every tick like they can control it with attention. They place the trade, they define the risk, they accept the risk, and then they return to neutrality because their life is not allowed to shrink down to a candle. This is how you get your power back. Power is not being right all the time. Power is not never losing. Power is being stable when you lose. Power is being stable when you win. Power is being the same man after the outcome. Because the moment the outcome changes you, you are owned. Owned by hope, owned by fear, owned by the need to prove, owned by the need to repair, owned by the ego's hunger. And that ownership shows up in small betrayals of your plan that you justify as adjustments. If you want a clean mental image of separation, think of it like this. Not as a spiritual exercise, but as a practical one. There is a space between you and the trade that most people refuse to acknowledge, and the hunter type protects that space, because in that space lives clarity. And once you collapse that space, the trade becomes personal, and personal trades are the ones you micromanage, the ones you close early, the ones you move stops on, the ones you add to impulsively, the ones you watch like a gambler. So the hunter type keeps distance, not distance from the market, distance from emotional fusion. He can be fully engaged and still not fused. He can be focused and still not attached. He can care about execution and still not care about proving. That's a different kind of calm. If you've ever felt that calm even once, you already know it's real, and you also know it's rare because most people never experience it. They live in constant micro-panic, and they call it passion. Now bring this back to the mechanics, because detachment is not just mindset, it's architecture. If your rules are vague, your ego will negotiate. If your entries are random, your ego will guess. If your risk is inconsistent, your ego will swing. If your review process doesn't exist, your ego will rewrite history. Structure is what starves ego. Structure is what quiets the nervous system. Structure is what makes boredom sacred, because boredom means you're not improvising. Boredom means you're not chasing. Boredom means you're not addicted to stimulation. Boredom means you've returned trading to what it really is, a process of waiting for conditions and executing when they align. This is why journaling matters, not as a cute productivity habit, but as a weapon against ego, because ego thrives in fog, ego thrives in vague memory, ego thrives in I think, ego thrives in maybe. But when you journal, you turn feelings into facts. You turn stories into data. You turn identity drama into numbers. And once something becomes numbers, it stops being personal. This is the part nobody celebrates. Nobody claps for the trader who did nothing for 3 hours because nothing was there. Nobody applauds the trader who closed the laptop after one trade because the plan said one. Nobody praises the trader who took a stop loss and stayed neutral. But those are the people who last. Those are the people who become consistent. Because consistency isn't built on intensity. It's built on repeatability. It's built on being the same man on Tuesday as you were on Monday. and the same man on Friday as you were on Wednesday. It's built on routine, and routine is not punishment. Routine is protection. Routine keeps your ego from turning the market into an emotional casino. Routine keeps you from needing the market to validate you. Routine keeps your identity anchored in something stable. This is why certain traders can travel, shift time zones, miss sessions, trade different environments, and still remain themselves. Because their identity is not "I catch every move." Their identity is "I execute my model." And if the model isn't there, they don't manufacture it. If you want a single sentence that sums up detachment without effort, it's this: you stop asking the market to make you feel okay, and you start making yourself okay before you trade. That's it. Because the moment you are already okay, the outcome has nothing to steal. It can't threaten you. It can't inflate you. It can't define you. It's just information. Win, information. Loss, information. Execution, identity. And when execution becomes identity, the ego stops interfering. Because there is nothing left to defend, the trade is no longer your worth, it's just your work. If this hit the part of you that's tired of the roller coaster, comment "I'm Hunter" and hit like so this reaches the traders who are still bleeding identity into every candle. Because some people won't understand this, but some will instantly. Now the ending is always the same. At some point, you either accept that the market is uncertain and you become stable anyway, or you keep demanding certainty and you remain reactive. At some point, you either stop treating outcomes like identity and start treating execution like identity, or you keep living inside the emotional swing. At some point, you either learn to wait and strike with precision, or you keep chasing and calling it ambition. The line is quiet. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself. It's a moment where you see what your ego has been doing, and once you see it clearly, it becomes hard to unsee it, because now every revenge trade looks like identity panic. Every overtrade looks like ego hunger. Every hesitation looks like yesterday's fear. Every impulsive entry looks like a need to feel something. And once you see that, the old way starts to feel heavy. The old way starts to feel childish. The old way starts to feel beneath you. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're finally honest about what you want. You don't want excitement, you want mastery. You don't want to win, you want consistency. You don't want to be right, you want to be stable. And stability is what turns trading into a long game you can actually win. So the next time you open the charts, remember, not as a motivational phrase, but as a personal standard, you are not here to feed your ego. You are here to execute. You are here to wait. You are here to act only when conditions align. You are here to be the same man regardless of outcome, because that's the only man the market can't manipulate. If this resonates, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're serious about moving differently, comment "I wait, then I execute." Because saying it once, publicly, even to strangers, has a way of locking it in. And after that, some paths close quietly behind you.